It's an emergency sitting of AFL 360 after a bloody extraordinary day. Lance Franklin's move to the Harbour City was supposed to be a formality. Instead, it's become one of the greatest player coups and club gambles in the history of the game.
We have some huge breaking news out of the AFL, and we're hearing reports that Lance Franklin has signed with the Sydney Swans.
First tonight, the football world has been left stunned. Franklin informed Hawks coach Alastair Clarkson of his intentions this morning. The Giants left blindsided by their big brother.
The club used Twitter to say it's pulled its deal based on advice he'll accept an offer from the Sydney Swans.
But the estimated $10 million contract has outraged Melbourne clubs.
A lot of the rival clubs are filthy. Teams are supposed to rebuild after winning premierships.
I've just been handed a statement from the Sydney Swans and I'll quote from it directly. It says, "We are pleased that Lance has expressed his desire to join the Swans."
Suddenly if he goes to the Swans and joins Kurt Tippett in that forward line, all of a sudden they are a big threat to Hawthorn going back-to-back next year. So the reaction from Hawthorn will be fascinating.
So you can see why we're here again. I'm Gerard Whateley, he's Mark Robinson. This Tuesday night, it's one story from all angles. Hello, Robbo.
How was the summer?
It was fantastic.
Went quick, didn't it?
This is like a bad breakup. We couldn't even last 24 hours apart.
How was dinner at home when you told Claire I'm not coming home?
Very popular move with footy fans, less popular with other members of, say, the immediate community.
You are on the couch without a shadow of a doubt. But what a day, what an extraordinary day. We knew as soon as it broke that we were going to have an extraordinary 360 tonight. We've got so much to talk about. It's been a really, really busy day for myself and everyone else in the Herald Sun offices.
How do you boil it down? What's your biggest takeout?
My initial reaction was, you beauty, Sydney. You are one hell of a football team. And then from there, you start thinking about everyone else. I believe GWS, we've got Dave Matthews, the CEO, coming on soon of GWS. They are reeling. This is a real kick in the guts for GWS. It's a kick in the guts for the AFL. Strong impression the AFL didn't know anything about this. The AFL like to know everything. One official told me they first heard of it, or read of it, on superfooty.com.au at about 11:30 last night when Neil Cordy filed the story. The development, there it is.
Swan's $7 million buddy bid, which has grown tonight to be 9 years. This is the biggest takeout for me. 9 years for Lance Franklin.
Huge risk, and it's the biggest recruiting coup, as you said, Gerard. And clearly it's the biggest risk since Alistair Lynch signed a 10-year deal worth, I think, $1.9 million.
We're going to talk to Lynchy as well. This was the back page of the Daily Telegraph in NRL Grand Final week with two Sydney sides playing.
About the only thing the AFL will be pleased about, I think. And the story really, really developed throughout the day, Gerard.
Well, the Giants blew the whistle on it, didn't they?
Yes, they did. They were angry.
Yes, they blew the whistle with a tweet that came. The Giants have withdrawn their offer to Buddy Franklin based on advice that he will accept an offer from the Swans.
Before we go on any further, we've released tonight, Gerard, that Lance Franklin's management, Liam Pickering, first approached Sydney, I understand, in the weeks after last year's loss to the Swans, saying, "Hello, Andrew Ireland, Liam Pickering here. How would you like Lance Franklin at Sydney? Because he'd like to play there." So that's been revealed tonight. So Lance Franklin knew all through the 2012 season that he would most likely be playing at Sydney this week. Liam Pickering sat down with GWS late last week. Leon Cameron confirmed that last night on 360. The offer was tabled, which was 1.2 over 6, and they're probably going to get endorsements from ambassadors, and that was going to push it up to the estimated $1.8 to $2 million that everyone's been floating with for much of the year. Obviously, at that meeting, Leon Pickering did not discuss with GWS that probably Lance is going to land at Sydney. So when they were told today, they took to Twitter.
There were great elements of intrigue throughout the day as this slowly developed. One of those was at the SCG, was this Lance Franklin or not? Seasoned observers say yes, the Swans swear it wasn't. Slow-mo, zoom-ins. One of the funniest elements of the day.
You could stop it.
Trying to figure out.
No.
Whether that was
No,
Lance Franklin.
Franklin hasn't got a chin that... Hey, I'm not having to go at you if you're not saying Lance Franklin for being a little bit jowly, young man, but I don't think that was Lance.
Good guns, wrong jaw. was how the court viewed that. OK, the statements that have come through, and we'll have voices to go with these shortly, but the Swans statement confirming what is afoot. The Sydney Swans can confirm that an offer has been made to Lance Franklin's management under the AFL free agency rules. We are pleased that Lance has expressed his desire to join the Swans. There is a due process that needs to be followed under the AFL free agency rules. The Swans intend to lodge the offer with the AFL on Friday at the commencement of the free agency period. At that point, the Hawthorn Football Club have the right to match the offer. The club is not in a position to make any further comment at this stage. You ran this past Adam Goods here on Friday night.
Well, there's been an inkling, everyone, for about 2 weeks now that something may be happening with Sydney.
So there was a breath of it in the middle of the year when there was a suggestion that the Swans had formally asked Hawthorn or formally flagged that they might approach Lance Franklin, and then it sort of faded away. And then you half shocked me when you asked the question.
Did it really?
Yep. But Adam Goods was absolutely emphatic in his answer.
Do you think he could be playing for Sydney next year?
I definitely know he won't be playing for Sydney next year.
Have you been asked that question in recent...
First time I've ever been asked, but yeah, I think that he'll be playing in Sydney. And
because there was scuttlebutt about that Sydney were going to make a move for him.
Maybe a couple of years ago. I think we're very settled with myself, Sam Reid and
Well, you've taken up all the cash anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So I might have to take a more of a pay cut to get Buddy up there.
Very settled with him and Sam Reid. And
now, we know now that he didn't know.
He did not know. He did not know. He didn't lie. He didn't lie to us.
So this is going to be a bit of a shock to some of the... As Adam Good said, we're very settled.
Yeah, I know. When we get Andrew Ireland on, and I'll be honest, I've spoken to Andrew today, only a handful of people knew. This is... Subterfuge is a word that sometimes lends itself to being sinister. They went after the most flamboyant player in the competition went after Sydney. Sydney said, yeah, we'll be talking to you. What sort of dollars are we talking about? They've managed to fit into the salary cap. But for this to, I suppose, to be achieved, it had to be kept really tight. My understanding is about 7 or 8 people knew, and that includes from the Franklin side and the Sydney Swans side.
Okay.
How would you like to keep a secret like that for 12 months? I can't even keep a secret for 5 minutes,
No,
mate.
You can't. You wouldn't even make it to the end of the show. Hawthorn didn't know. This is the statement that's coming out of the Hawks today. After discussions with Lance Franklin earlier today and strategic management this afternoon, Hawthorn Football Club understands that Franklin has decided to explore his options under free agency. Under AFL rules, the club recognises that as a restricted free agent, Franklin may consider offers from rival clubs during the free agency period that can be matched by the Hawthorn Football Club, which you can rule out immediately. The AFL action here is essentially to investigate this before it goes ahead because of the magnitude of it. As part of the review process by the AFL's Legal, Integrity and Compliance Department, key people involved in the proposed Franklin arrangement, at this stage a non-binding offer of a 9-year deal, will be interviewed in the coming days. And then this is going to be the spill-on from all of this. The AFL also confirmed that all club and player allowances, including the cost of living allowance, are currently being reviewed by the AFL. The Sydney Swans Football Club are aware of their TPP obligations and understand that they may not...
they may need to accommodate this proposed
contract in an environment in which the cost of living allowance may be altered or removed altogether.
Well, read that as, yes, the end of the cost of living allowance is near. It's just very near.
Yes.
Now, the difficulty is that if they sign Lance Franklin and they have signed Kurt Tippett, that when the cost of living allowance disappears, Sydney Swans still have to manage those salaries under the cap. So that will be a very difficult situation for the Swans.
It is a juggling act. Righto, let's get into those who have shaped this story throughout the day. Neil Cordy wrote it in the Daily Telegraph. Cords, welcome to AFL 360.
G'day, Jared. G'day, Robbo.
Be straight up and down with me here. When that went into the paper this morning, did you anticipate by lunchtime that it would be a done deal?
Oh, it's been staggering the pace that it moved at, Jared. I was hoping to get a day off. I'm actually talking to you from Lawn. I'd organised a couple of days off after the grand final, and then lo and behold, this thing unfolds. And it's been an amazing story. I thought the Tippett deal last year was a big one and incredibly intricate. But now the way that the Swans managed to keep this one under wraps and even keep it hidden from Goodsey has just been remarkable.
When did you first learn of the courts?
I heard whispers several months ago about some of the Swans sponsors looking at third-party deals for a big player who was on the move, and I looked at a few different names, and then ultimately Lance Franklin was the one that it could only be. And then I got denials from the Swans that anything was afoot, and that was right up until essentially it was a green light, and ran with the story in today's paper.
Are you aware how this is playing in Sydney, Cords, in NRL Grand Final week?
Yeah, well, it's massive. As you said in the lead into the show, for the back page of the Daily Telegraph, when you've got the NRL Grand Final to be devoted to AFL is just massive. I mean, it is the equivalent of the Storm getting on the back page of the Herald Sun in AFL Grand Final week, and it's you can't underplay just how big that is.
Hey, Cords, have you spoken to any, I don't know, your relationship with any of the players or key officials who learnt today what was going on? Have you spoken to any of them, and if you have, what was their reaction?
Yeah, no, I haven't spoken to any of the players, but that was why it was interesting listening to Adam Goods. It was just an indication, that the fact that this can be held away from a player of the importance of Adam Goods in this club, and given his relationship with Buddy Franklin, we only saw the pair of them together to announce the Indigenous team that's heading to Ireland, and they were obviously quite close and friendly, and for Buddy to keep it under wraps there as well was really interesting. But it's a shock to everybody.
Neil, well done, and thank you.
Good on you. Thanks, Drew.
Neil Cordy, who put this in trial this morning in the Daily Telegraph. The man who's done the deal, the Chief Executive of the Sydney Swans, Andrew Ireland, is also with us now on AFL 360. Andrew, welcome.
Thanks, Jared. Pleasure to be here.
Well, I bet it is. This has been bounced around. The AFL's confirming that it's 9 years, and the figure being put is around $10 million. So how close is that to the mark?
That's pretty close to the mark, Jared, yes.
Is it the boldest thing you've ever been involved with in footy?
It probably is, I guess. When I was in Brisbane, Alistair Lynch joined us on a 10-year deal, which was substantial, but I guess given Buddy's status in the game at this stage, it is. And I guess the first thing to say is that we're really respectful of the fact that Hawthorn, with the restricted free agency, Hawthorn's obviously got the opportunity to match the offer, and so it may well be that whilst we've put a good offer to Buddy and Liam, that they may well match it.
There are so many questions surrounding this, Andrew. The biggest one that's caught late in the day is how can a club possibly do a 9-year deal? What's the machinations in deciding that to be the term?
Well, I think we obviously, in terms of sitting down and working out where our list is and the profile of our list, and in terms of talking to Liam mainly, but also Buddy, was the fact that he was very keen to play through and thinks he can play till he's 35. He's not looking to come and change clubs for a couple of years. He was very keen to see an extended part of his career. And we think, given the sort of place he plays, that is absolutely possible, and certainly was for Alistair Lynch, who played 11 years after being recruited at 26. But I guess the important thing is that we have got some some good players who are still on our list, but are older players in Adam Goods and players like Ryan O'Keefe, Reece Shaw, LRT, players of that ilk who are now over 30, and so we've, in terms of coming to look at a deal that would work for us in terms of managing our cap at work, that's what we looked at.
Couple of very short, quick questions here, Andrew.
Yep.
What happens if Buddy does an ACL next year and then he does another one? Is it unconditional money, $9 million?
Yes. I mean, the contracts, the AFL player contracts are very clear cut in terms of your responsibility to your players, in terms of them playing. And so, we looked at it. The thing I've got to stress is that really Buddy was keen to come to us, and I guess that's the part that we really need to stress, that he and his management indicated to us about a year ago that he'd like to come to the Sydney Swans. To be frank, we thought it would be difficult to achieve. We had readdressed it during the year, and as we got a better feel for what our list would look like, it was able to be, a deal was able to be put together. Now, as I say, we've still got to wait to see, because it may well be that Hawthorn matched the offer.
No disrespect, but when people first heard of the offer, the immediate reaction, Andrew, is, wow, this can't be right. How can they do this? And late today, the AFL sent out a press release saying there will be an investigation. The word investigation sometimes has got this ooh about it, but I think they were blindsided by the deal. Were you prepared for the AFL to come out and say, right, we're going to investigate all matters involving this move from Franklin from Hawthorn to Sydney?
Yeah, look, Mark, we've got no qualms about it. I mean, in this case, it's a reasonably easy situation, because the rules are clear. You can have a discussion with the manager and have a non-binding agreement about what a deal might look like. But as I say, in this case, it's really out of our control, because we'll submit it, and if Hawthorn match it, well, we're out of the picture. That's the end of it. So it's not like trying to force people through or negotiate. It's a reasonably straightforward process.
When did Buddy know that 10 million and 9 years was it 9 and 10? Yeah. When was that alerted to Buddy? 12 months ago?
No. My understanding from Liam is it was probably as less than a month ago. It could have even been a couple of weeks ago.
And you ticked off on it? I mean, what happens here? Buddy Franklin says, I want... No, who offered? Did you offer or did they ask?
Well, in the end, we worked out what we thought we would need to offer him to get him to come to the Sydney Swans. He was saying he wanted to come, and I think it'd be fair to say whilst the deal was a long deal, in terms of how much it is per year over the journey, it isn't probably the biggest amount, and it may even be that the early years are reasonably able to be fitted into our cap.
Yeah, so the strong message there is the early part when perhaps Tippett is your top earner, Franklin's low, and then they'll pass each other along the way. Let me ask you this, Andrew, and you will have heard the criticism already, and there will be a chorus. To those who would say, the Swans, you have gone too far, this is too brazen with the advantages that you get, how will you respond to those criticisms?
Well, I think, Jared, the issue around the cost of living is something that's been not well understood. The fact is, if Buddy comes to us, there'll be 37 other players who are on our list who have got cost of living in their contracts. It's very clearly defined. You can see exactly how much has been spent and allocated to those players. There's no wondrous pool to add to it. Clearly, he's got some rights to the COLA over the journey. The reality is that even in the 10 million, there's a substantial amount of it which is in marketing contracts, which we're allowed to do, which falls under a different part of the cap, which no COLA applies to. So, in our mind, And I guess the one thing I'd like to say is that if someone came to us when we first got Kohler or had it and said to us, there's this rider that applies to it that says that, yeah, you can play in the competition, but hold on, when it comes to chasing players, you're not allowed to do it because you've got this other mechanism in place, then fair enough. But I've never heard anyone say it. For 10 years we've recruited mainly players who weren't getting the game at other clubs, and certainly this last 2 years we've been a bit more aggressive, but that's because where our list's gone, and we're going to have a number of players leave us this year, which allows us to do it.
Andrew, you saw Adam Goodes on the show on Friday night. He didn't know. So as the players have become aware of this, what's been their reaction? And do you have to have a fire sale of players to be able to make this happen?
No, in terms of where our list would be, I mean, we've got 3 players who are retiring, 2 of them in Jude Bolton and Marty, who've been regular players and on good contracts with our club. Mitch Morton's also retiring. Jesse White's indicating he wants to play somewhere else. It's likely that Shane Mumford might play somewhere else, and a couple of other players. So in terms of how the players are, Jared, I did see the interview with Adam, and he wasn't foxing, he didn't know, and there was only a few of us who did. But on Monday, John spoke to the leadership group in depth about it, and the leadership group were fully supportive.
Will you, Andrew, last question, will you be requesting ambassadorial money for Lance Franklin?
No, not at all.
Final thing, well done. Gutsy, courageous, risky. You're the most flamboyant person in the competition playing for Sydney Swans, maybe, potentially, probably.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Jared.
Andrew Ireland, the Chief Executive of the Sydney Swans. The party that got left at the altar was the Giants. You can't manufacture rivalry. This is a real moment between the Giants and the Swans in Sydney. This was Leon Cameron, the coach of the Giants, with us last night. Do you think there are now other clubs trying to lure Franklin now that it appears that he's gettable?
Look, I wouldn't discount it.
Sydney?
I wouldn't discount that there'd be other clubs looking at it.
Sydney?
Oh, it's hard to say. I mean, I'm obviously not in the other club's camp, but look, I wouldn't discount it because, I mean, very rarely do big key forwards come out of contract.
Do you think there are other clubs around the edges with Franklin?
I wouldn't have thought so, no. I thought...
Done and dusted.
Done and dusted. You're probably not going to be really happy until he says yes.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, but it'd be disappointing if he went to Sydney, wouldn't he, after...
I think that's probably going to be a tough task, considering that they picked up Kurt Tippett last year.
And yet that is the reality. The Chief Executive of the Giants is Dave Matthews. Dave, welcome to AFL 360.
Thanks, guys.
I'm not sure how much of that you might have just heard, but do you feel like you got played during all of this?
Oh, not necessarily. I think in the end we put the most responsible, sensible offer in that we could, and certainly all the way along, and I'd take Lance and Liam on face value. I mean, you have to. They seem very sincere in their interest right up until last week. And certainly went into this week thinking that, you know, the offer we'd made was a pretty strong one, and, you know, then we obviously became aware of a bit of interest from elsewhere, including the Swans, and, you know, it is what it is. I mean, we're fairly realistic about the free agency situation. We understand that a player gets a bit more of an opportunity to have a look at where he might want to go, and so there's always that, I guess, the door ajar, but we thought we'd made a pretty good offer and an appropriate offer. I mean, we're not going to compromise our list strategy for one player, and we're also not going to make what I would see as an irresponsible offer to one player. So,
David, I would suggest this is a real kick in the guts for GWS. Now, I know you're going to have the money and you'll look elsewhere, but we know the marketing power, we know the performance power of this individual. I thought that you needed a guy like Lance Franklin. But I would have thought this morning, mate, or when you found out that the Swans had got him, your cross-town rival had stomped on you again. And I felt this was a kick in the guts. Do you agree or not?
No, I don't, because, I mean, I think the reality here is that he's taken an offer more so than selected the club. I mean, if it comes to pass that he goes to the Swans, then I mean they've been required, from what I just heard then, to put a 9-year offer in. So we put a 6-year offer in. The way I'd put it to you, Robbo, is that this is free agency at work.
Is free agency good? Is free agency good then, David?
Well, probably not in some ways, because you'd have to ask yourself today, is this the right result for the competition? You know, the competition sets itself up with rules to try to equalise the distribution of talent, and 2 years in a row you see a top club getting probably the highest profile uncontracted or free agent. But what I'd say to you is this: he looks at his incumbent club that just won a premiership, and I think Hawthorn have been absolutely outstanding in the way they've handled it. And they put what they see as an affordable, appropriate offer. He looks at us. We put what we put as a 6-year offer. I mean, we thought long and hard about the 6th year, to be honest. We agonised over that. We thought, well, gee, would we go another one? So we changed it from 5 to 6, but in the end you get knocked out by a 9-year offer. So I don't think that says anything particular about the Giants whatsoever.
But what about when you found out that Franklin approached David Franklin manager Liam Pickering approached Sydney? We've learnt tonight, 12 months ago, to say Lance would like to play.
I'm surprised you think that's a story, Robert. I've followed you on. I saw a bit of your stuff on Twitter today. That's some sort of revelation. Do you reckon he hasn't spoken to most clubs in the competition?
When did you speak to him? When did GWS speak to him, Dave?
Do you think most clubs in the competition haven't approached him?
No, I don't, to be honest. I would think a handful of clubs, not most of them.
Ask yourself this then. If it was so certain and so predetermined that it was going to be Sydney, why would you put a 9-year offer in?
Well, when the player...
Have you asked yourself that question?
Yeah, I have asked myself that question. I've also asked...
Answer?
What? Well, they've got to put a deal in. They've got to put a deal in eventually, okay? And it came today. But I want you to ask this, David. If Lance Franklin's management approaches Sydney and says, I want to go there, wouldn't you think, well, I think he's probably going to go there, because Lance Franklin's manager, Liam Pickering, did not say to GWS, actually, he wants to come to GWS. Did he or did he not say that?
How do you know that?
I'm asking you.
Of course he was sincere about it. I mean, went with the player himself, spoke with the manager all the way along. What I'm saying to you, in answer to your question about the effect on this of the Giants, is a high-profile player out of contract. He's a free agent. We talked to him. We talked to his manager. We talked to him about the opportunities at the club. We put together what is, to us, a responsible, sensible offer. And in the end, he looks like he might take a 9-year deal. Well, I mean, we're not in the business of giving 9-year deals, Robbo. I don't know many people that are, to someone who's going to start next season at 27. But, what we do is we have a good look at who's available. We prioritise seeing whether we could do a deal with Franklin, but, that isn't going to come to pass. But that doesn't mean we don't have plan B, C, D and E. And we'll just continue to work. I mean, we've got the All-Australian full forward in Jeremy Cameron. Our forward line is not particularly the issue. It just so happened that the highest profile uncontracted player or free agent was a forward. Now, we had a look at him because you do your due diligence on him. You have a look at what he might be worth. You see if you can get him in, and if we can't, we can't. But we move on. We're looking at all sorts of alternatives.
How are you going to get experienced players, Dave? Leon Cameron's given us the very strong hint that loyalty is such a force still in football, despite the main topic of tonight. And the signature man who might have brought others with him by sort of the force of personality and possibility is not going to be there.
Well, I think your point on loyalty is right, because I think one of the things expansion's shown is there is a high degree of loyalty in the competition, which is a good thing. But we've said a few times that this is the year we want to look at our options in terms of trading, and we've got some picks there to trade that we'll work on. We're not done yet in free agency or uncontracted. You're talking about one player, and you're talking about one player who's required a 9-year deal at significant money. I mean, there's other players out there that will require smaller terms for smaller remuneration. So, I mean, we're still in there, Jared, obviously. We're hoping to be very active, but we've got every confidence in our list strategy, and I've got every confidence in Gubby Allen and Stephen Silvani, and one thing we are trying to do is take a long-term view and make sure that this club's set up appropriately and that there's no panic decisions made.
Just a yes or no here, Dave. Are you still prepared to trade pick one?
Yes, we would be, yeah.
Dave,
and we've said that all the way along, but it all depends on, what gets contemplated, in return. It obviously needs to equate to fair value, but, we'll see what we can get in first, obviously, and then if there's an opportunity there, we'll look at it.
Dave, appreciate your input.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Dave Matthews, the Chief Executive of the Giants, who missed Lance Franklin. More after the break, including the Collingwood President, Eddie Maguire, who's always led the charge against the cost of living allowance. What does it mean now?
Flying high.
Coming from Guerra, big play here, Stratton run down, but okay, Franklin with a hurdle, and then the long one, this will be something, it is! It's an MCG special from Buddy.
It was the goal of the year. He was a premiership player on Saturday. He's going to be a Swan in one of the most astonishing coups that we have seen in football history. The Swans. Last year Tippett, this year Franklin. How? How is a question that lingers across the competition. The Collingwood President, Eddie Maguire, has long railed against the cost of living allowance, first with Brisbane and then with Sydney. Eddie, welcome to AFL 360.
Welcome, boys. In fact, the first railing was against Sydney rather than Brisbane, so just to get that one clear. It's been going a long time, and it goes a long way to suggesting how we've ended up at today's activities.
So is this simply too brazen, Eddie, by the Swans?
I think, Jared, what's probably happening is the Swans have smelt the breeze and realised that the cola business is over, the cola wars are over, that now that the AFL have got another mouth to feed up in Sydney, that they're not just the favoured son in the competition, and they've realised let's roll the dice, and they've been fantastic, full marks to them on getting this done today, but it extends a lot further than that. I heard in your interview with Cords early on, and even with Andrew Ireland, that they're talking about third-party deals. Well, third-party deals work a lot differently for a lot of clubs. We saw the stuff that happened at Carlton with Judd. And I'll give you an example. This year, Dane Swan wanted to start his media career. He wanted to get involved in a few places, and his management, unbeknownst to me, approached Triple M, the radio station I work at, and they wanted him to come on once a fortnight and pay him $200, $100 after tax, and the salary cap officer got involved. Now, did I hear tonight on your program that they have been talking to major businesses, the Sydney Swans, in relation to third-party deals? Did I hear Andrew Ireland state tonight on your program categorically?
No, it wasn't Andrew, it was Cords. It was Neil
he said that, and then categorically Andrew Ireland said that the cost of living wouldn't come into play because a lot of his salary would be paid by third parties. So there is a need for a major investigation into this deal.
Ed, your initial reaction, anger, or is it worse than that?
No, well, why would I be angry? It's only a follow-on from Tippett last year, and going back in time to right back to Dermott and Tony Lockett, to be perfectly honest. It's been going on forever, and people just want to barrack in football these days, not look at the facts. I mean, if I was the North Melbourne president, I've spoken to James Brayshaw today, I'd be horrified. I hear from the Carlton Best and Fairest tonight that Stephen Kernahan has said there is no longer a level playing field, and that Mick Moldhouse has come out and called it quite bloody disgraceful. So there's plenty of people around the place just saying this is just not fair. I mean, I think the problem is that clubs don't even get involved in these negotiations. Collingwood, the richest club in the AFL, who would love to have another power forward, didn't even contemplate speaking to Lance Franklin because we can't get at these third-party deals because the AFL are all over us. We do not have a cost of living component. It's not fair. We can't. Everyone will say 3 cheers for the Sydney Swans for coming up with this great strategy, and well done to them. They've landed it. They've got their man. But if you're not allowed to even get into that space of thinking, you can't come up with these types of deals.
So you don't believe, Ed? You don't believe, Ed, when Andrew spoke tonight, Andrew Ireland said that cost of living is shared across all players on the list and it's written into their contracts. You obviously don't believe that.
Well, it doesn't matter if it is, mate. If 2 of them have got 20% of the salary cap, they're getting 20% of the cost of living. I've always said I don't mind a bit of cost of living for players who aren't getting a whole lot of money in Sydney, but if the difference now is to give Lance $1 million, what does that mean? Does it mean he gets a housekeeper in a bikini rather than one in a maid's outfit? What the hell's that all about? I mean, come on, guys, this is ridiculous. It is a straightforward rort. It has always been. And clubs have acquiesced over the years because we know how important the Sydney Swans are to the development of the game. And this is an ultimate poke in the eye. And it's not the Sydney Swans' fault. Good on them for going as hard as they can. It is yet again the AFL's problem. I said this, if you get my quotes out, from the Sunday after the 2002 grand final, all I've said is we need to have a level playing field. And I'll go through it for you. We came through, we said priority picks would lead to tanking. What did it do? It led to tanking. This third-party deal has, again, upset the equilibrium of what the whole draft component is supposed to be, and that is top teams. Yeah, fair enough, Hawthorn probably should lose a player after winning the flag, but not to Sydney. They should have gone to Greater Western Sydney or somebody down that end of the ladder. Far less a St Kilda or a Melbourne or anybody else has got no hope in hell of ever getting hold of any of these players.
Is this a blow to GWS,
Ed? The fixture is a major drama. I mean, they've got to go through these things and decide whether they're running a competition or they're running a marketing competition.
I mean, you guys, all the clubs have been really supportive of the expansion notion of expanding the game into the new markets. How much do you think this is a body blow to GWS?
Well, GWS now, they will declare, I heard Dave Matthews before, look, my line's been a hotline today from everyone, including GWS. They now realise that cost of living is shot, that's gone, and they've missed the boat on that. So that's going to really stymie their opportunities, you'd think, going forward.
Missing out on Franklin, though, Ed. Missing out on Franklin.
What's that, mate?
Just missing out on landing Lance Franklin for the game, for it looking after or helping, not looking after, helping the expansion club.
Well, it would appear that Lance Franklin has decided that even despite that horrid cost of living, he and Kurt Tippett have decided far better to go to Sydney than to go to the home, Gold Coast last year, and to the great new frontier, the Greater Western Sydney, and get all that other third-party money the AFL are going to shovel his way. It's well done to the Sydney Swans, but it just shows the whole thing to be a complete farce, and people are getting sick of it. It's as simple as that, and I think it's left a really nasty taste in a lot of people's mouths today. Most of all, I think also for Hawthorn, because, you know what, they probably deserve to be able to keep their superstar player. Yeah. And 2 days after they won the premiership, there's a few people at Hawthorn walking around going, what's it all about, Alfie?
You invested a lot of good time in the AFL's equalisation debate. You took the trip to New York and all the meetings there. Do you feel like that was a waste of time?
Richard Collis threw that up last year as a major red herring. He comes out every year and says they're one bad year away from oblivion and all the rest of it. It's interesting that the Swans, they seem to just announce the same profit every year, win, lose or draw. It's enough of this stuff. I mean, we saw today that Michael O'Loughlin's going to head up their academy. It's another advantage they have to be able to hide players. You saw the reaction Richard Collis had last week to the audacity that Paul Roos might even look at one of the players that they've had hidden away there. Enough. We've either have a level playing field or in a level competition. You know, there has to be a few little bits and pieces in there. As I've said, I've not been against cost of living. If a young player's going up to Sydney on $70,000, he probably needs extra money to help him through. But Lance Franklin on, they're saying, what is it, $10 million over 9 years? You know, some would maybe even say it's more than that. I don't know if he needs a cost of living component. But the bottom line is, it's the third-party deals. It's all these other things that have been in there. And the game is now just walked out of shape. We have to get it sorted out. That's why we gave the AFL the rights to have a commission in 1985 to look after all clubs, not just a favoured few. And I think we've just about hit the wall on all this sort of stuff, and it's time for something to happen before something big happens to counter it.
So let me ask you this finally, and I ask this in all seriousness. Should the AFL step in and block this deal from happening on Friday?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. The rules are there. Just as I was scratching my head why Melbourne got suspended when, I used this saying before, guys, you can't put the cream in front of the cat and then kick the cat if it licks the cream. It's there. They've set this up. Look, it's been going on for years. Just because it doesn't suit people now because Greater Western Sydney missed out, they wouldn't have given us stuff if it had been 2 years ago and Greater Western Sydney wasn't there. You know, plenty of players have gone north. It is what it is. I've been screaming about it now for 11 years. Hopefully people now realise that
what are you going to do, Ed? What are you going to do? I mean, I hear you, and I heard you 10, 12 years ago. I hear you talk about it. What are you going to do? Are you going to lead a charge with these club presidents and say, hey, AFL, we're not accepting this anymore?
No, the AFL is smart enough and good enough to work that out. Robbo, I'm not going to be screaming and shouting about anything, mate. I'm going to just worry about Collingwood from now on, because I've been in New York worrying about equalisation on behalf of all these other clubs, and so too of other really good people who are there, from Peter Gordon at the Western Bulldogs through to Andrew Newbold. And we go and we meet and we carry on and we get the Sydney Swans banging the table and doing all this sort of stuff. And you know, we know that the Rort's half been in, but we've half accepted it because it's been good for the competition. Maybe it's time we just say, right, one in, all in, we look after ourselves and we go back to the old days and rip the joint apart. Is that really what we want? Because that's what we're being told today is the way to go about it. 3 cheers for the Sydney Swans. They got their man. Maybe it's time we all go out and do the same. I don't know. What do you reckon, guys? Should we just blow the competition up and just go stealing everyone's players and not have Melbourne and St Kilda and Bulldogs in the future? Just have the top teams, you know, ripping and scraping and pulling all the deals together? Or do we sign up to what we all signed up in the first place, and that would be a fair and equitable salary cap to allow all clubs to have the chance? It's not equalisation, guys, isn't about how much money you have to pay for 500 coaches. It's equalisation in its purest form is an unencumbered salary cap that is even, so that every club can pay 100% of it, an unencumbered draw, an unencumbered draft, and a free opportunity for everybody to compete. That's what the nature of fairness is in a competition. But if you're in a marketing competition, the fix is in, and it's time that it got out.
Ed, appreciate your thoughts.
Good on you guys. Have a good night.
Eddie Maguire, the Collingwood president, with us. Now, the Lance Franklin career so far and the projections of what's to come. And Alistair Lynch is the man to talk to about this. He signed the 10-year contract. Now, he's a 26-year-old, 27 before he starts next season. He debuted in 2005, so he's just completed his 9th season. 182 games, 580 goals. The end of his contract will be 2022. He'll be 35 years of age. It'll be his 18th season. And just working on some round numbers of 22 games a season over 9, and say 3 finals every 2 years with the Swans, you could put him as number 4 all-time, 395 behind Tuck, Bartlett and Fletcher.
Well, I hope he does play all those games of footy, because he's great to watch.
Lynchy, did you ever think we would see a deal to rival and, well, almost better, I think on adjusted inflationary figures, better the deal that you did?
Yeah, well, I must admit, I probably never thought we'd get near the term. Obviously, the dollars have grown dramatically with the salary cap increases, but yeah, it's a massive deal and something I didn't think I'd see.
How big a risk is it for the Swans, Alistair?
Oh, it's a huge risk. I mean, certainly, obviously, you do your due diligence, you assess the athlete that you're bringing up. I mean, I suppose when I first came to Brisbane, I think Brisbane were spruiking the fact that I don't think I'd missed a game through injury. I'd played 120 games in 6 years, but then everything went wrong to start with. I broke my collarbone in my first practice match, and then broke my collarbone after my 13th game, and had a knee operation, then had some health problems. So after 12 months, there's a lot of doubt whether I'd actually play again. So I think the Brisbane Bears, as they were back then, and certainly Andrew Ireland, they were very nervous that they may have made a mistake.
So from all that you know and what you lived through, is this simply an extravagant offer?
Oh, it's an extravagant offer. I mean, vastly different situations are the Brisbane Bears to the Sydney Swans. Obviously, the Brisbane Bears were trying to get someone that was in the sort of peak of their career to come up and encourage the best young talent to come up, and rather than top up on a premiership team. So Andrew, as he sold it to me back in those days, it was about development of the game in Queensland, and certainly to develop a new philosophy that the footy club had ventured down, and that was to find the best young talent rather than just get a lot of guys at the end of their career. So that was part of my task with coming to Brisbane.
Do you need to take risks, though, in today's football, Lynchy?
Do you need to take risks?
Yeah, do footy clubs need to take risks? Do you need to land a guy like Lance Franklin that you have to actually come up with a 5-6 year plan and a bold trade move? I know it's not a trade this time, but is this a sign that clubs have to become a lot more adventurous?
Well, I think, certainly they do, and I think clubs, certainly in the position that I went to the Brisbane Bears at the bottom end, but you've got to be aggressive, especially for the non-football states, to be able to grab a player of the ilk of Buddy Franklin, to get him out of Melbourne, where there's
obviously there's a lot of distractions, but there's a lot of extra things that he can earn as well. But you've got to be aggressive to make him think he can go north, go to a place like Sydney or go to Brisbane, and that's the challenge for even teams like we've obviously seen. The Gold Coast missed Kurt Tippett last year, and probably GWS elected not to go down the Kurt Tippett path. But you've got to put something together to make it very attractive. The Gold Coast did it to get Gary Ablett there, and a very big offer to get him to move away from basically his hometown where his dad was a legend. So they did make a big move, and certainly Brisbane did many years ago as well.
Lynchy, appreciate your time.
No worries. Good to see you back on the air, boys.
Yes. Let us free. Shackled to the desk. Alistair Lynch with us on AFL 360. So it's explosive. We'll ponder the question next. Have we crossed a threshold in player movement in the AFL?
You'd give him a big chance, wouldn't you? He can spray a bit from set shots. He missed a pretty easy one early in the match.
He sets it sail for Hose, and Isaac kicked it. Messi goal. Have a look at it. Get out. The double cobra celebration.
Isaac Smith, he's given it a good ride. That is a monster. That's a huge kick for Hawthorn.
Gee, it's a good kick. It is a great kick. It's one for the ages.
There's one story from all angles tonight. Lance Franklin poised to become a Sydney Swan when the free agency period opens on Friday. It's a remarkable moment, I think, in the history of the game. David King. Kingy, good to have you back with us. Have we crossed a threshold today, do you think?
I think it's welcome to AFL US. This is the American version of free agency now. It's here to stay. When it first came in, we thought it'd benefit the fringe players. They get opportunity at other clubs. That's not going to be the case. The teams are too smart for that. They're going after the stars. They're attainable. This is just going to get incredibly competitive from here on in. And to be honest with you, I think Eddie's right. The gloves do need to come off for every club now. It's either you embrace it, you get active, you get courageous like the Swans have done, and credit to them, or you get left behind.
Do you think the AFL envisaged this in free agency, Kingy?
Good to see you back from holidays too, Robbo.
It was a hell of a summer. Thanks for the spring carnival. We had a great time, didn't we?
Did we win? Who won the cup?
Look, I don't think they did. And I don't even think the Players Association did. But this is what they've asked for.
Yeah.
And this is the flow-on effects. You've opened the box. It's hard to close again. It's running now. And I think it's you either get aggressive now. Everyone's talked about St Kilda with their stars coming to the end of their careers. What do? It is time to get active. This Franklin move is huge, and I think it's been an absolute coup by Sydney, no doubt.
So you use the example of US sport, and I'm with you there for what it's worth, but is there the risk that we actually become the EPL, where the bottom teams foster the talent and then get picked off by the rich who break the cycle and forever remain up the top?
Well, if they sit down the bottom of the ladder and act like the meek, they will. They'll get chewed up and spat out. It's about being courageous now. You need to make decisions that are going to hold your club in a really good position. To make smart decisions, you've got to be able to rebuild quickly. And to do that, you can't sit down the bottom of the ladder like St Kilda and Melbourne and the Bulldogs have done in the past. And you've got to get active. You've got to get involved. You've got to embrace this. I mean, why the Sydney Swans are doing this? Because the sheer finance of it, we're all talking about the Franklin contract. But what price of flag? What price of premiership? They could easily win 2 or 3 in the next 5 years, and we'll be sitting back saying what a fantastic decision this was.
How much of a body blow is it to GWS?
Oh, huge. And look, there's a couple of things that I just don't ring true with me. I can't believe that their offer didn't blow the Hawthorn offer out of the water or blow the Sydney offer out of the water. This is a club that's taken a different tack to Gold Coast. Gold Coast went and got their star from day one, and they've built around him. We were under the impression that GWS were going to bring a star in second year, third year. I tell you what, this bloke was up for grabs. He's going to live just down the road and going to play for the Sydney Swans. It's going to be a hard marketing campaign up there when the best player in the competition is down the road.
I don't think he was up for grabs, mate. 12 months ago, the Swans approached him. He approached the Swans. I don't know if that equals up for grabs.
I don't think 1.2 a year over 6 is a Godfather type offer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do you think the Giants should still trade pick 1 now in this scenario, Kingy?
Well, I'll be interested to see what the strategy is, because Dave Matthews just earlier on your program said that they've got plan B, C and D, or players B, C and D. I can't wait to see who they are, because player A was pretty handy and it was probably going to be the biggest marketing tool they could have used for years. It's a club that's not drawing a great deal of crowd at the moment. Not a lot of hype up there. Kevin Sheedy's been the only buzz up there for some time, with the exception of Jeremy Cameron. It's a club for me that really desperately needed to get him, and I don't think they can trade pick 1 now. I think they need to stay the course.
Righto. Thanks for your input, Kingy.
Enjoy your holidays, boys.
Thank you,
Catch up
David.
soon.